Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Matt Donahue with Mission Financial Planners calling, and this is your weekly market update for the week ending, I guess, June 21st, first day of summer. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're seeing steady gains again from the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. They kept pushing their record levels higher. Uh, and they had their eighth positive week out of the last nine. The Dow climbed more than 1%, but remained more than 2% off its record high set a month earlier. Mid-year deja vu. Hey, guess what? Approaching the midpoint in 2024, the U.S. stock market's top performing sectors are the same pair that led the market in 2023. As of Friday, IT and communications were the top two leading sectors. In the full year of 2023, IT's average return was about 58%, and communication services was about 56%. U.S. crude oil prices rose for the second week in a row, climbing above the $80 per barrel level for just the second time since late April. On Friday afternoon, oil was trading at about $81 a barrel, up from a recent low of less than $73 a barrel on June 5th. Retail slump. U.S. retail sales fell short of expectations in May, barely rising from the prior month's figures. Sales rose 0.1% in May after recording about a 0.2% decline in April. So hopefully the Fed's looking at that and saying, hey, maybe we're going to be able to lower interest rates a little sooner rather than later, but we'll see. We'll see. Housing setback. Well, this might be more fuel for that conversation. High mortgage rates appear to be slowing down the U.S. housing market. Sales of previously owned homes fell for the third month in a row. The National Association of Realtors reported that sales of existing homes fell 0.7% in May to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.11 million. The UK is holding its central bank is holding its key lending rate at 5.25 for the seventh straight meeting, although policymakers did signal they could cut interest rates in the coming months. The Bank of England and the U.S. Federal Reserve are among the major banks that have recently been reluctant to cut rates. Buyback scorecard. U.S. companies spent more than 8% more to buy back their shares in this year's first quarter compared with last year's fourth quarter. Share repurchases by companies in the S&P 500 climbed to almost $250 billion, according to the S&P Dow Jones indices. Compared with the same quarter a year ago, buybacks were up by nearly 10%. Price checks ahead. A report scheduled to be released on Friday could clear up some of the recent uncertainty over inflation's trajectory. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index is the U.S. Federal Reserve's preferred gauge for tracking inflation. The index recorded annual rates of 2.5% for both January and February before rising to 2.7% in March and April. Week ahead, today, June 24th, no major reports. Tomorrow, the Case-Shiller 20-City Composite Home Price Index, Consumer Confidence Index. Wednesday, new home sales from the U.S. Census Bureau. Thursday, first quarter GDP. It's the third estimate. Pending home sales from the National Association of Realtors, durable goods from the U.S. Census Bureau, and weekly unemployment claims. Friday, we already talked about the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. That'll be the big one. And the University of Michigan Index of Consumer Sentiment. Philosophy quote of the week: the truly educated aren't quarrelsome. The beautiful and the good person neither fights with anyone nor, as much as they are able, permits others to fight. This is the meaning of getting an education, learning what is your own affair and what is not. If a person carries themselves so, where is there any room for fighting? And that comes from Epictetus. What that essentially means, folks, is with education, you come to learn that there are certain things that are worth arguing about and certain things that are not. And even if you are in an argument, keep your head, keep your cool. Don't get too wrapped up in the moment. Resist that urge if you can to always get the last word in, to always prove yourself right. You'll probably get a lot more out of it if you just listen and see what other people have to say. It's summer. It's the first day of summer was on Friday. Children are running around. They're doing all their stuff, and like that old Christmas song says, you might you might be kind of like, hey, when do they go back to school? Is it tomorrow, right? But let's talk a little bit about child independent care tax credits. You want to make sure you utilize this. Okay, so last year the maximum allowed credit with one child was $4,000. With multiple dependents, the maximum allowed credit is $8,000. The numbers change every year, so check with your tax professional to see what current rates are. Here's 10 facts from the IRS about dependent care tax credits. You can qualify for the credit if you paid someone to care for your child, dependent, or spouse. The care you paid for must have been necessary so you could look for work or attend school. This also applies to your spouse if you're married filing jointly. The care must have been for qualifying persons. A qualifying person can be your child under the age of 13, a spouse or dependent who is physically or mentally incapable of self-care, and must have lived with you for more than half the year. You and your spouse, if filing jointly, must have earned income. Special rules apply to a spouse who is a student or disabled. The payments for the care cannot go to your spouse, the parent of your qualifying person, or to someone you can claim as a dependent on your return. Care payments also can't go to your children under the age of 19, even if the child isn't your dependent. The credit's worth up to 50% of the qualifying costs for care, depending on your income. That credit is limited based on the number of dependents, your child care expenses, and your taxable income. Overnight camps or summer school tutoring costs, they do not qualify. You may not count the cost of care given by a person you can claim as your dependent, and special rules apply if you get dependent care benefits from your employer. The form you report this stuff on is Form 2441, the Child and Dependent Care Expense Form. Make sure you include the social security number of the qualifying person to claim the credit. You must report this information when you claim the credit on your tax return. You must also include the name, address, identifying number, so tax ID number or social security number of your care provider to claim the credit. And remember, this is not just a summer tax benefit. You might be able to claim it for care you pay for throughout the year. Again, use Form 2441 to report it to the IRS. When you're filling out that form, think about a couple things. One, the maximum amount of expenses allowed for one dependent and multiple dependents. It is limited each year. Ask your tax professional for the details. You need the name, address, and tax ID number of the dependent care provider in order to complete Form 2441. And if your employer offers dependent care reimbursement, that will reduce the credit that is available to you dollar for dollar. This credit does help reduce regular income tax, but may not reduce any alternative minimum taxes. Okay, so that's a lot, right? 2441, fill it out. Make sure you've got the tax ID number of the child or the dependent who's receiving the care and the person or organization that's providing the care. And just remember, it can't go to a dependent or someone who is can claim the person receiving care as a dependent. We're going to stick with our brain health for one more week, I guess, one more week. So we're going to talk about neuroplasticity. It's a really interesting article this week from the Mayo Clinic. Essentially, where I think it's going to apply to most of us is not the example at the beginning of the article, which it's a little 4-year-old boy who's surrounded by some French relatives. The little boy doesn't speak English, but within a couple days, he's understanding a lot of the conversations. You know, kids at that age, they learn and they absorb things. They're just little sponges, right? Well, as you get older, it's a little harder to learn things. And so as you age, it's super important to keep pushing yourself, not just physically and getting exercise, but mentally as well. Okay. So when we think about that, there's a lot of stuff you've heard us talk about this week. Things like make sure you get plenty of sleep, make sure you get exercise. But if you do those things and you're always challenging yourself mentally. Maybe you're learning an instrument or you're reading, getting that exercise, making sure you're getting enough sleep. Well, what'll happen is it actually sets up your brain to recover more quickly from things that happen, like maybe a stroke. It can also help your brain manage early effects of things like dementia or Alzheimer's much, much better than someone who isn't able to do those things. Okay, so it's fascinating stuff. Check it out. It's in our weekly blog post as well. But it comes down to the basics, folks. Sleep, exercise, keep um, um, managing the stress and the blood pressure, limit your alcohol consumption, try not to smoke, and a big social network, right? A strong social network, I guess I should say. And again, the cognitive side of things, your brain is like any other muscle, right? You use it or it starts to deteriorate. Make sure you keep using it. Puzzles, challenges like Sudoku, Wordly, family game night, even just basic things like I said before, like reading. So a lot to talk about this week. Hey, it's first week of summer. Hopefully everybody's staying cool. But otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.